Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and today we're going to be sharing a story from the San Francisco Gate. Nearly 85% of San Francisco restaurants, at least in two particular neighborhoods, have shut down. This is absolutely insane. It's also really sad. With a lot of businesses, things have been taken over by corporations and chains and big companies, right? Like there used to be small independent electronic shops. They don't really exist anymore. Pretty much all the electronic shops are either Best Buy, Fry's, Micro Center, big stores like this. You used to have like independent stereo shops. Even those have kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. Restaurants are one of those industries. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of shitty chain restaurants, but restaurants are one of those businesses or one of those industries where there's still a ton of family-owned businesses, still a lot of small entrepreneurs opening restaurants, and a lot of owner-operators and people like you and me running restaurants, right? It's not all big chains. It's not all Potbellies and TGI Fridays and Applebee's. So it's really kind of sad to see this. Before we get into the article, I figured I'd kind of talk a little bit or rant a little bit about this. It's no secret how I feel about our reaction to COVID. I feel like it's been a huge overreaction. I feel like nothing makes sense. I feel like there's no consistency. California has, not only are they in a complete lockdown, but even prior to that, they shut down not only indoor, but also outdoor dining. All the while, Gavin Newsom is out having dinner at, what was it, the French Laundry? And not only was he out having dinner, you know who he was having dinner with? He was having dinner with a bunch of the top medical professionals in California. So it makes you wonder if Gavin Newsom, the governor, and all the medical professionals aren't scared of COVID and are comfortable going out to eat. Maybe there's something the rest of us don't know. Maybe it's that we don't all need to be hiding inside our homes. We've seen plenty of other instances of this. We saw the mayor of Denver. I think he was tweeting out, telling everybody to stay home over Thanksgiving while he was flying out of Denver to go to Mississippi. Here in Chicago, earlier during the lockdown and the pandemic, Lori Lightfoot was getting a haircut when she was telling everybody else not to get haircuts. De Blasio was out to eat when he was telling everybody not to go out to eat. And I forget the other mayor, but there was another mayor who recently was tweeting or posting on social media telling people to stay home while he was down in Cabo San Lucas. So whole lot of hypocrisy going around. Here in Chicago, restaurants are currently closed. Indoor dining is shut down. I'm not really sure the official status of outdoor dining. For all intents and purposes, it's pretty much done because it's 30-something degrees here. It's starting to get cold, and it's only going to get colder. A couple weeks ago, me and my girlfriend were driving to pick up some food, and I saw people literally in like parka jackets sitting outside eating at a table. Didn't look enjoyable at all. And then one other thing that's just absolutely crazy and drives me fucking nuts is it's acceptable to recreate the indoors outdoors. So restaurants are allowed to put tents outside. Now, the interpretation of a tent is very loose. I have seen some restaurants where they have an actual tent that's open on, if not all four sides, at least two sides. But there's a lot of restaurants that have fully enclosed tents with heaters and absolutely no airflow in there. And I've actually seen a couple restaurants in Chicago where they've literally built big glass boxes outside and everybody's eating inside this big glass box. Now, I don't know if COVID gets tricked because people are in the street instead of indoors, but an indoor space with no airflow is an indoor space with no airflow, whether it's inside of a business or whether they've recreated the indoors outside in the street. But it's absolutely silly to me that we're having restaurants spend 10, 15 grand, maybe even more to recreate the inside outside. And in all reality, there's no ventilation system. So these indoor areas outside that they're recreating have poorer airflow than if people were to just stay inside in the first place. I have one more kind of funny story to tell before we kind of launch into this. Even though restaurants have been shut down for a while here in Chicago, me and my family and friends have been going out, frequenting restaurants. And me and my parents were out I've noticed breakfast places tend to be some of the ones that are kind of disregarding Governor Pritzker's orders. And this breakfast spot near me, I've been going there since I was a little kid. I don't know about little kid, but I've been going there since I was probably at least early teens, if not longer than that. And I was recently out to breakfast with my parents, and I've been going there for a long time, so we know the people who own the place, know the people who run the place. Really nice family. All their money is tied up in this restaurant. The entire family works there, from the grandparents to their kids, who are kind of the main owners, to even their children. You have 3 generations working in this restaurant, and if they were to follow Governor Pritzker's orders and shut down with no help from the state or federal government, they would go out of business. So they really have nothing to lose deciding to stay open. So anyhow, we had a nice breakfast. As we were finishing our breakfast, we're up paying at the cash register and kind of shooting a shit with the wife of the owner, and she got a phone call, and she picks up the phone, and I could hear what the person on the other end was saying, and the person said, "Oh, do you have pickup?" And they said, "Yeah, we're doing pickup. You can do carry out." And she said, "Do you have outdoor seating?" She said, "Yeah, we got a tent set up outside. You can eat outdoors if you like." And this woman on the phone said, "Do you have indoor seating?" And she said, "Well, yes, we have indoor seating. You can come eat indoors as well." And the woman said, "I'm calling the police." Now, why this woman is going out of her way to call restaurants and try to, quote unquote, bust them out, even though most local governments aren't going to do anything about it in the first place, is beyond me. Mind your own fucking business. But I thought the restaurant owner's wife, or the hostess, had a hilarious response. She said, "You know what? If you like, I can tell them. I can tell them myself and save you the trouble. They come in for coffee around 10:30. So the local police are going into this restaurant having coffee every morning." So she said, "If you want to call the police and report me, I'll just tell them when they're in here at 10:30 that you have an issue with this." I thought that was pretty amusing. But without further ado, let's get into the article again. This one comes to us from the San Francisco Gate. It's titled, "It's Decimated Down Here." About 85% of San Francisco FiDi and SoMa, I'm guessing those are 2 San Francisco restaurants, are now closed. This kind of brings up an interesting discussion about how this is going to shape the future of cities, the future of kind of how we live, the future of where we live, our communities. It stands to be seen whether people continue to work remotely indefinitely, whether this sticks. A lot of people are still working remotely. I think more people have started going back into the office and things like that. But there are, in the Chicago Loop, it's over the years it's gotten a little bit more residential. But the Loop has always been kind of a ghost town on nights and weekends, and it's because nobody really lives in the Loop. It's a business district, and because it's a business district, you have a lot of restaurants and coffee shops and things like that that are open, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and they survive off people getting off the train in the morning and grabbing their morning coffee. They survive off of, people taking a midday break in the afternoon to go get a milkshake or a cookie or a coffee from somewhere. They survive off the after dinner people taking clients out to work, or people going out to work with their colleagues. With nobody going into work in the Loop, there's all these businesses that have nobody to frequent them, and so the Loop's just going to turn into an absolute ghost town. And if people ever do wind up going back into the office, there's not going to be any coffee shops, there's not going to be any restaurants for them to eat at. Or do these areas just turn into complete and total ghost towns? That kind of remains to be seen. But this whole thing has kind of a trickle down effect in the sense of nobody goes to work. Well, so there's nobody to go to the coffee shop. And then those coffee shops aren't buying supplies or aren't buying food or coffee beans or whatever else, so it hurts those businesses. Anyhow, without further ado, let's kind of continue on. The sight of hurried business types carrying box salads was typical of San Francisco's downtown lunch rush before March, but as the business crowd remains at home, that once familiar scene has since been replaced with emptied streets and dim storefronts. Ever since the pandemic wrought havoc on restaurants and bars around the financial district and south of the market, Adam Mesnick says his sandwich shop, Deli Board, has become something of a destination for customers who happen to be in a neighborhood for coffee or walking to an appointment. It's decimated down here. I mean, the whole time you're sort of watching this crumble happen, Mesnick said, about the current state of businesses around SoMa and FiDi districts. To describe these former bustling neighborhoods as decimated wouldn't be a far stretch either. Based on credit card usage data gathered by MasterCard shared with San Francisco's Chamber of Commerce, about 293 of 344, or 85% of bars and restaurants, are presumed closed throughout SoMa, FiDi, and many adjoining neighborhoods. That percentage includes businesses that were both temporarily or permanently closed through November 30th, around the following San Francisco zip codes: 94102, 94103, 94104, 94105, 94107, 94108, and 94109. Editor's note: some of these bars and restaurants have appeared closed and not open due to the Thanksgiving holiday, according to MasterCard, which looks at credit card usage from the end of October through the end of November. I think the fundamental scary thing for downtown SoMa and to some of the Moscone Center is just the lack of business customers and the day-to-day people who are on the bread and butter of the cafes and places that haven't even reopened, said Lori Thomas, the executive director of the Golden Gate Restaurant Association. So much of these downtown restaurants, and certainly the ones by Moscone Center, are really dependent on business travel. I think we're going to need a vaccine before the state's going to let us have conventions. Now, the vaccine is another interesting issue. I was actually going to, I know it's not super business related, but I thought it was an important video to put out. I'm personally not going to get the vaccine. I was going to make a video. I actually made a video the other day telling you guys why I wasn't going to get the vaccine, and the audio was really kind of quiet. I was out and about running to Menards and getting some stuff for a few projects around the house, and the audio was really bad. But for me, if you guys want a video about it, let me know. I'd be happy to kind of share my views or my thought process. I'm not saying the vaccine is necessarily inherently dangerous, so we have seen a number of deaths. It is causing facial paralysis, and there are some people getting allergic reactions. We're still pretty early on into the rollout, so that remains to be seen. But I just feel like this thing was pushed out pretty quick. It hasn't gone through animal testing. It's only been around for a matter of months, so we don't really know the long-term effects. And from a simple risk-reward perspective, I already had COVID. I'm young and healthy. And again, from a simple risk-reward perspective, I would rather take my chances with getting COVID a second time than get this vaccine, which has God knows what kind of effects. I want to have kids someday. If it winds up sterilizing you, which is something that has been kind of talked about, I'd rather just take my chances with COVID. Although now they're saying COVID causes erectile dysfunction as well. My wiener's still working fine, so at least we got that. But I got off on a huge tangent here. Let's carry on with the article. To get the full scope of citywide restaurant closures is difficult, according to Thomas. One way to quantify is by going through approximately 4,000 existing restaurant permits to check which ones are still active. The problem is, she points out, that sometimes businesses appear active or open despite their actual status. Who's going to bother to call the health department and close a permit? That's the last thing you're going to be thinking about doing if you had to close a business, Thomas said. So I think credit card data is what we should look at. In looking at the credit card data for San Francisco, the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce can gauge the number of closures based on the lack of transactions made at bars and restaurants. At the beginning of the pandemic, restaurant closures in downtown were at about 50%, which is shocking, said Emily Abraham, public policy manager at San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. We at the Chamber were very concerned for all our members and all of the industries in the city. I think it's going to be a steep uphill battle. With just a few weeks left in 2020, it's a trend Abraham believes will continue into 2021. There's only so much to pivot for restaurants, Abraham said. So unfortunately, we're going to see them closing in larger numbers. Throughout the pandemic, restaurants have found new ways to run businesses, all the while following an ever-changing operational rules and restrictions. Last week, San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, and Marin counties agreed that they would issue a stay-at-home order ahead of Governor Newsom's state timeline. For now, restaurants will only be able to offer takeout without any outdoor dining. Meanwhile, bars and wineries will be forced to close. I'm pretty sure Gavin Newsom's winery is probably still going to be hosting events and using illegal workers, legal immigrants, to run those events, but that's an issue for another video. But for food industries around downtown San Francisco, the absence of office workers and conventions has been the most detrimental. Mesnick said that about 25% of businesses relied heavily on catering, but that piece of his finances has since diminished. I did have a good deal of catering, just like anyone could imagine, Mesnick said. We had 5 or 6 really good clients that we would feed once a month, so in terms of my production, we're not even close to where we were. What my income was based on was private parties and things of that nature. It's also unclear how the landscape of downtown San Francisco will look like in 2021. Many tech companies like Facebook and Google have said they'll allow their employees to work remotely for the foreseeable future, while others, such as Twitter, announced that its work from home policy will continue indefinitely. Permanent, remote, and work from home opportunities are going to eliminate a huge base of foot traffic and big company luncheons for those catering orders, Abrams said. I do think it'll have an impact on the demographics of the city. You know, a buddy of mine works for a company called CDW here in Chicago, and man, they have a lot of big clients like HP and things like that, Cisco. And the amount of parties and takeout and everything else that business orders from various businesses in the loop is fucking insane. I can't tell you how many like after-hour rooftop open bars and things like that I've tagged along to with him. And literally every day they have like 3 different restaurants bringing lunch. They have snacks throughout the day. My buddy put on like 30 pounds when he started working there. But all that business for restaurants, coffee shops, etc., has pretty much dried up. And I think that's what they're kind of experiencing in San Francisco. The article goes on to say the city of San Francisco has offered assistance to help its restaurants by waiving some permit fees, implementing the Slow the Streets program, and allowing establishments to build parklets for outdoor dining. And while Thomas thinks they've all been helpful, it's just not enough. She is not optimistic that restaurateurs will be able to hold on without major government assistance. We have to get this aid from the federal government, and we cannot wait for the inauguration, Thomas said. We need something temporary now because people aren't going to make it, and not just San Francisco. We need millions of dollars into this industry. Amid the losses, the city did see new restaurant openings in 2020. Yelp told the San Francisco Gate that between March 1st and November 30th, San Francisco had a total of 299 new openings and additionally observed 844 restaurant reopenings within the same time frame. I have heard a lot of people say, who cares if these businesses close? Eventually new businesses will pop up to take their place. And while I have seen a few new places pop up in Chicago and around me, personally, like, you'd have to be kind of fucking crazy to open up a restaurant, let alone any brick and mortar business. The idea that the government can just arbitrarily decide to shut down certain businesses while leaving others open, which mostly seems to be shutting down small businesses and allowing big corporations to continue to operate, that's just fucking insane, and that's not a risk that I would want to take moving forward. If I were going to open up any type of restaurant or brick and mortar business, it'd probably be one that relies heavily upon takeout orders or is very flexible in the type of business that it does. And one sad thing I've noticed in Chicago is a lot of the restaurants that shut down, it's not as if they were bad restaurants. Some of the restaurants that have shut down here in Chicago are some of the most popular and best restaurants in the city. The problem is their style of food doesn't really cater to takeout. So there's a restaurant called Toast, a really popular brunch place. It was always packed. It was always hard to get a table. There was always a wait. But the problem is most people aren't going to be ordering brunch takeout to their house. And also restaurants like that make a lot of money off mimosas and Bloody Marys and drinks, you don't really have any of that with takeout. So a business like that isn't going to succeed. I'm a big fan of like the Brazilian steakhouses, the all-you-can-eat steakhouses where you got like the red card and the green card and they come around with meat until you put your red card out. Nobody's going to get takeout from a place like that. So those types of businesses are going to die as well. It has been kind of cool and promising to see, restaurants getting creative with trying to drive business. Restaurants tend to get higher quality like meats and produce from their vendors. So I've seen some restaurants who are offering like make your own meal at home packages. I've seen some restaurants starting to sell like very high quality groceries. I saw one kind of cool restaurant that was actually giving away a free roll of toilet paper when you ordered takeout from them, which was kind of a funny thing back during the toilet paper shortage. So it has been kind of cool to see businesses be kind of creative with continuing to stay open and drive sales. But overall, it's been really sad to see a lot of great restaurants wind up going under. Let's see, Mesnick shared that he feels fortunate that he can sell a product considered essential amid the pandemic. He's thankful for his staff that has done a tremendous job of adapting. But as Mesnick looks to next year, he considers how Deli Board might change. Next fall will mark 10 years on his lease at 1058 Folsom Street. But after that, he's unsure what the future holds. Right now, I'm in the line of COVID fire, said Mesnick. Anything could happen tomorrow, and I think complications of doing business in San Francisco have always been ultra complicated by forces beyond people's control. There were inherent challenges, and unfortunately, there are truly exposed in the light of COVID. I think there have to be some efforts from the city to inspire people to continue to grow here. And let's take a look at comments. I'm just curious if there's any and to see what people have to say. I owned a restaurant slash pub in the FiDi for 10 years, sold it 8 years ago because of the increasing cost of doing business in this city. Sad to say, but these places will probably never recover. You had a nice work-life balance due to the fact that it was a 5-day operation. The downside is you had very specific times to pull in revenue, quick lunch time frame, and then after-work crowd that was over by 8 p.m. It was a constant challenge to operate within these small windows of opportunity. I just can't imagine how they make it moving forward. Now, that's kind of the situation I described in the Loop, right? The Loop here in Chicago, nobody really lives there. So Monday through Friday from maybe 6 in the morning till, I don't know, say maybe 8, 9 at night, it's popping, right? You got the morning crowd getting off the train, you got the lunch rush, you got people grabbing coffees throughout the day, and either coworkers or people taking clients out to dinner afterwards. But after that, it's dead, and nights and weekends are dead. And if nobody winds up returning to these offices, it's just going to become a fucking ghost town. Let's see. Hard to imagine this not changing San Francisco for years to come. All the small businesses the city protected from national chains could not be protected from the pandemic. Probably going to start seeing more chains move in than ever before, and yet it may still be years before the city gets back to its buzz because so many talented, well-paid professionals have been able to relocate thanks to remote work. People who paid through the nose for a studio or a small apartment in a city are buying McMansions across western states and removing many of the best customers from the city's economy. And here's an interesting thing as well, people are talking right now about kind of a silent civil war, a civil war with no shots fired. Obviously, this country is incredibly divided. But here's an interesting thing we're seeing, right? Like, everyone's leaving California and everybody's leaving New York. A lot of people in New York are moving up to like Maine and Vermont and things like that. Lots of people in California are moving to Colorado, Montana, Wyoming. But another thing we're seeing is a lot of people are moving to Texas and Florida. And, it's kind of crazy how different this country is. Like, if you live in California, New York, or even by me in Chicago, everything's locked down. Everything feels fucking weird. This doesn't feel like real life. But shit, man, you go down to fucking Texas or Florida, if you don't watch the news, you would not know anything was going on. Nobody's got masks on. People are out at bars. There's concerts going on. And so I think this country may wind up seeing kind of a split where, people who wind up in California wanting to pay high taxes and have gun control and lock down restaurants and wear masks, those people can live in California, New York. And people who, want to get back to normal life are going to wind up moving down to Florida and Texas. And, we might wind up having this kind of split country where, what it looks like in one state it looks like a foreign country compared to others. Let's see. So politicians that have closed down the city still make their hundreds of thousands of dollars salaries, but small businesses are forced to close and rely on the government to keep them alive. Sounds about right for an economic reset. The tech money is gone, and the rest of us regular folks don't want to pay almost $20 for a salad. You deprive business owners of their ability to make a living and provide almost no financial support. What did you think was going to happen? I lost my work as a back waiter for a politically connected restaurant owner who has built his chain with the city money they embezzled off parked cars in a city racket. The HR person for the restaurant told me there was no more work for me, but that I should go apply with the city for a different role. They were also funding as a heroin needle runner and picker-upper. They basically need a guy to pick up heroin needles. That sounds like a pleasant job, huh? This is a city role the Untouchables created for me. A recent restaurant analysis concludes the lockdowns will force mid-tier and independently owned restaurants to collapse and close forever, while high-end and corporate VC-backed restaurants will proliferate. How convenient for Gavin Newsom and his Plump Jack Corporation, almost as if by design. I'm guessing that's kind of like a Let Us Entertain You style business that runs a bunch of different restaurants. Decimated means reduced by a tenth. This is decimated, 8.5. Meanwhile, approximately 30% of the EDD funds that have been dispersed have been obtained fraudulently. Billions of dollars. One apartment in North Bay County has received $50,000 or 2 crooks using stolen identities since midsummer. 0 accountability, mismanaged out of a panic and hysteria. They will literally be bankrupt. Once the reality of the cratered tax base sets in, the city leaders will act, but with no tax dollars to do anything. But will they still be squandering hundreds of millions of dollars on a homeless problem that never gets any better? Let's see. Restaurants were closing before COVID due to high rents and change of feeding habits of people in the tech world. More companies were catering lunches and dinners as a convenience to employees. When COVID kicked in, the employees have stayed home, but the high rents are still in place. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense. Like, the same restaurants that an employee would go out to get a salad for lunch are the same restaurants that these businesses were catering in from. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Let's see. Meanwhile, at least 8 companies partially owned by Gavin Newsom collectively received millions of dollars from the Paycheck Protection Program, according to an ABC7 analysis. Recall Gavin 2020. And I hear Gavin is getting worried about being recalled. Anyhow, I think we've read enough. My voice is starting to go hoarse, and I got to let my dogs out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know your thoughts. Drop a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.